Hello, Gophers. You're listening to Go Podcast. I'm Dominic St-Pierre.
And I'm Morten.
And we have a guest today, Thorsten Ball. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
The one and only, if I can say that.
I mean, maybe I think there's more, but yeah.
No, but I mean, yeah, you're pretty well known in the community and whatnot. So, yeah, we won't talk about your two books because, well, I think you have talked about them a lot.
Yeah, it's been 10 years. Can you believe it? 10 years.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
2016, the first book came out. Yeah.
Yeah, they are still recommended a lot, though. They are still pretty active. It's nice to see.
Yeah, I still get people still send me emails and obviously read the books. And funny coincidence, I live in pretty small town here in Germany, and there's no tech to speak of. You know, like not really. You know, like not tech in the sense that we think of tech. And then I got an email, I think it was 2 or 3 months ago, from somebody who was like, hey, is it possible to get a signed copy of the book? And I read that sentence and I was like, then I need to order them and sign it and send it out. You know, like, obviously you have to do that. And then I read the next 2 sentences and he's basically saying, oh yeah, I live in the next town. You know, so he actually lives in the next town over, where I didn't expect anybody to know of me or of the book. So I signed the book, walked over there and dropped it off at his place, which was pretty cool.
That's crazy. Cool.
Yeah.
Damn, you could have been kidnapped and whatnot, like in the Misery, or I don't recall the title of the film and whatnot. You could have been kept there.
Yeah, it's a common trap, you know. Hey, you sign your book? Yeah, a lot of authors get killed that way.
Oh well, what can we do? It's a hard life.
Yeah, hey, it's a risk I'm willing to take. You know, all for my audience.
Wow. Yeah. So you've worked at SourceGraph and went to Zed a couple of times and returned to SourceGraph.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. So was Ross not up to the game for you or something like that?
No, I mean, prior to, joining Zed, I always had, the thing that I do at work, and then the thing that I do on the side, you know? So before I joined SourceGraph, for example, which was my first full Go job back in 2019, I did, like, obviously the books, right? Like on the side, for the prior 4 years, and Go was my side thing, and then the hope was, someday I'll get like a job where I get to write Go. And I did write Go previously at another job, but not as the full-time thing. And so while at SourceGraph, I got into Rust, and then I worked on like my side project and optimizing compiler in Rust, and I worked on this. And then Zed was the thing where I'm like, okay, now let's see if I can really do Rust, you know? And it was async Rust, or it is async Rust. It's a desktop application. It's performance sensitive. It's a completely different thing from a lot of other things that I worked on before. Before that, I hacked a little bit on Ghost, the determinant emulator, in like the first few versions, and I got like 5-6 patches in or something, and it kind of started this appetite for, desktop applications and the tweaking the performance and millisecond precision, 120 frames per second, like all of that stuff. And then at Zed, I had all of this, but it wasn't Rust that made me go. It was, in hindsight, I don't know. Some people like this kind of music. Some people like that kind of movies. And I just felt like it didn't click for me. Like, I don't know. The team is fantastic. Like, they're really, really good programmers. But I think I kind of was, more after like building a successful business in some sense. And I think Zed, there's a big part of it that's about building the best possible text editor. And, I get it. I fully get it. But at the same time, AI got stronger and stronger. and Cursor was taking over the throne from VS Code and autocomplete, and I worked on the autocomplete, the LLM based autocompletion at Z, and we fine-tuned the model. And I think a lot of those different things combined made me think, nah, I got to move on, Sure. And then I looked around and talked with friends and talked with other founders or like even investors who had like portfolio companies. But at the end of the day, I landed back at talking with Quinn, CEO back then of Sourcegraph. And I was like, yeah, like what I talked with him, and at this point I had become, as the kids say, AI pilled, this is, this was in November 24, I think. And I was like, okay, everything is going to change. Like the text editors, like all, like I could see so many things that I felt like an heretic, like writing about it even or mentioning it, like this was late 24 when if you mentioned AI, people were like, ugh, you're a traitor to the programming community. Like nobody would say this, of course, but there was this sense of this. And I said all of these things to Quinn, and I was like, this was non-committal. He was in Frankfurt at the airport, and I live like 30 minutes from the airport, and he was like, hey, you want to meet up and have breakfast? And we're just talking, and I gave him this whole, here's what I would, if I were back at Sourcegraph, here's where I would put an LMN, and here's what I would do. And we realized, oh yeah, like we should, come back and do all of this. And then I was like, yeah, why not, And then I went back, and then after 2 months there, we quickly hit on this thing, AMP, started building this, and then it took a life of its own and became the product AMP, the coding agent, and now it's its own company. And now I'm the co-founder with Quinn and with 18 others, like a team from Sourcegraph split off, and to only do AMP. And now I'm at AMP since basically November last year, and working on a coding agent, and it's been a ride the last 2 years.
That's really cool. You kind of got me AI pilled. I've gotten
Nice.
less AI pilled since, but I read your article, The Emperor Has No Clothes. And I was just like, this cannot be true. This cannot be true. And then I started building not a coding agent, but kind of like my own coding workflows. And then I think it was Claude Code came out, and I just switched over to that. And I was just mind blown, But I think that article you wrote was great. I kept sharing it because I think it really opened a lot of people's eyes to how easy it is to build these agents.
That's cool. That's not. Yeah, I think that will. Like sometimes when you write a thing and there's this, I have to get this out. Like because back then, just to set the scene. This was in early 25, right? I think I published it in March 25 or something. And back then, Cursor was still the reigning champion. Like this was maybe a week or maybe either a week after or a week before Claude Code came out. And then, we already had AMP when Claude Code came out, but we hadn't released yet. But Cursor was king, and people were talking about tab completion. They were talking about models. They were talking about embeddings. They were talking about apply models, which Cursor had. So in a chat with the, we called them assistants back in the day. With an assistant, you would have like a separate model who would then modify the files, and you would have like, deterministic things baked into this where, if the model replies like this, then we replace the file. And then what Quinn and I ran into, and obviously what is then the recipe of success for all of the coding agents, is that you don't need much. Like the models are so good, you just give them tokens, you give them these tools, and then the magic is in the model. And you don't need embeddings, you don't need an apply model. If you give an agent, back then, like if, 3 tools, read file, list file, glob files or something, right? So an ls, a rip grab, and cat, basically. And if you do this, and you ask it, hey, where in our code base do we handle password resets or whatever, it will go and it will find it. And it's amazing. Like back then it was amazing, incredible. And this was back when people were like, oh, you need embedding search and, you know, this other thing, and you need to index the whole database. And then the magic was, no, you just give it 3 tools and then you let it run and it will find it. You know, it will run multiple graphs, it will run multiple list files, it will open multiple files, and it will have a good answer for you. And I think that to me was mind-blowing, and I felt like I have to get this out. You know, that's where the subtitle "The Emperor Has No Clothes," you know, came from. Like the title is "How to Build an Agent," and the subtitle is this, because people were like, "Oh, you need all of this fancy stuff," and no, the whole point is it's just the magic is in the model. These models are getting more and more powerful, and the more powerful they become, the less handholding they need. So yeah, I felt a strong need to get it out. It's funny to hear they resonate with you, and you also shared it.
Yeah, a lot. I mean, I joined a hackathon here in Barcelona, where I basically built this. It was like a hackathon around using AI to build VC tooling, and I built this company research tool, and I basically just did what you do in your article, but then I also gave it access to the SERP API, something like it does Google searches for you. And then I did a live demo while I was presenting, and one of the VCs had a portfolio company, was like, try and search about this, you know. And that was it I did. And then it generated a report, and the guy was like, how did it find that information, right? And there was nothing else to it. It was just like, hey, you are this, do this, here's the tools. And it's up to the races.
Yeah. I did a demo. This was the day before I published that post at like an internal Sourcegraph company meetup. And I was on stage talking about AMP and, you know, coding agents. And I did a demo. And somebody who's now on the AMP team, Brady, he said he still remembers that demo, and he still thinks it was one of the most mind-blown moments. And it looks quaint now, or it sounds quaint. But what I did was I had a website open, and I took a screenshot, and I used, you know, from the screenshot tools, the arrow thing, and I pointed the arrows at 2 buttons, took the screenshot, pasted it to the agent, and said, like, flip those 2 buttons, you know? And that was it. Like, no source code mentioned, nothing else. And the agent would go, it would read the text in the image, it would recognize what the arrows are pointing to, it would find the buttons in the code, it would find the file, it would flip the buttons, and would say the buttons are now flipped, and you would see the website update in live, and the buttons are flipped. And, you know, this whole thing of taking a screenshot and annotating it and giving it to your computer, you know, as somebody who's been programming for 20 years, it's alien, you know, it's alien that a computer can now understand this. And yeah, I still think it's amazing.
Yeah, that is crazy.
You know what? I found it amazing. Me, it's not for coding, but sometimes I'm on Stripe and my screen reader isn't telling me something. I take a screenshot and I ask the LLM, you know, can you please tell me where the F is that thing?
Yeah, that's a good example.
Yeah.
What I use is, I haven't used it in a long time, but the phrase I used is, the models are like fuzzy to non-fuzzy converters, you know, or non-fuzzy to fuzzy, and what you can point at stuff, or you can say, what is this? And you don't have to be precise, you know, you don't have to be binary correct or wrong, and now the computer can understand you, you know. It's crazy.
Can we return a little bit to technical a little bit? So I'm curious to hear, you know, not exactly what you said when you talked with Quinn about the potential of what it could be different and things like that. But can we have can you explain a little bit what exactly are we talking about, and what AMP brings to the table that, you know, other I don't even know how to call that anymore, but other coding agent is doing?
I mean, okay, so in that specific conversation, this is before I came back, right? But it's AMP wasn't a thing. But what I said was,
it could be contrasted with what it is today, for example.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you an example. So, in my first time at Sourcegraph, I worked on something called batch changes, which is Sourcegraph is, to recap, it's a code platform, backend code search platform. We had customers with 30,000, 100,000, 400,000 repos, and you would put them into Sourcegraph. We would index them, and you could say, find me the function called so and so, and you would have. You could say, give me the commit that touched this function in the last 2 weeks, and it would search through, your 100,000 repos and find it and whatnot, and elaborate searching and whatnot. And I was the lead for a long time on a team called Batch Changes, which allowed you to do a lot of changes across many, many repos. You could say, you would start and write a YAML where you would describe these changes. And it kind of, think of it like a GitHub Action YAML, where you have like different steps and caching, and there was some logic in there with like, conditionals and whatnot. And fun fact, coming back to the interpreter, I built a partial evaluator for this. So I would partially evaluate the YAML and like put, to evaluate the conditionals so you get out the final thing that you need to run. So that came in handy, and that's something I always mention when people ask, like, what do you need to know about interpreters? And I'm like, well, it came in handy once.
This thing was Turing complete, or what?
Yeah. No, it wasn't really Turing complete, but I guess. Well, I don't have proof either way, but you could do some things. And the problem was, you could run these commands, and what behind the scenes, what it would do is, you would find by specifying a search query, you would find all of the relevant repos, say all of the repos that use Node.js or Go version 1.13 or something. And then you would say, give me all of the repos that have a Go mod file or something and Go 1.13. And in those repos run blah, blah, blah to update the Go version. And then you would specify the shell commands, right, to do this. And that's how it worked, and that's how people do this. And then you can manage all of those changes, and you can create pull requests or merge requests, like 15, 20,000 at the time. And it was pretty, looking back, pretty deterministic. Like you would specify these specs and say, this is the change I want. And then you would find repos and you would run the bash commands and whatnot. And one of the problems that we constantly ran into is that when you run through 10,000 repositories, they all look different. Like, yes, they all have a Go mod file, but turns out, one has a vendor folder, the other doesn't. In one, the Go mod file is in a subfolder. The other, like stuff like this. One uses ASDF or MEES or that kind of stuff. And so then you start to run this, and then you will go back, and then you will say, oh, if, you write bash by hand, if you can imagine it still, like you would write bash and say, if there's a ASDF or a MEES or whatever, then do this. If the Go mod is in this, use the folder, CD into the folder, and then do like all of that stuff. And you would kind of, by trial and error, get closer to the perfect spec that can do your change. And obviously that's a shitty UX, like, like it's not fun. Yeah. And it's kind of like, when people try to get something working in CI and you see the commits where it's like, try again, try again, dot, try again. And then the F words and F word, and that's kind of what it was. So then I talked with, that's one thing that I worked on. And then the other thing that I worked on was code intelligence. So we would semantically index code bases in Sourcegraph. We would, summary is we would extract the symbols, we keep an index of symbols, and then you can say, give me all of the classes that start with whatever, foobar, abstract, something, and it would find you all of the classes or the methods or the functions or all of that stuff. And for that, we had to do this whole indexing thing, right? You had to index it on every commit and then keep these indices. And then you had a query language and all of that stuff. so that was two things. And then when I worked, coming back from Z and I was talking with Quinn, I was like, man, like if I had to build batch changes today, I would put an LLM in there. Like nobody, like the idea I had, this was before coding agents, the idea I had was nobody should have to write YAML by hand, but you can fine tune a model. So you can write in like and say, hey, write me a batch spec, like a spec file that changes upgrades all of the Go versions and all of this, and look out for a Go mod file. And then the model could generate you the YAML, right? Nobody should ever have to write YAML. That's what I said. And then for the indexing, for the searching, like nobody should have to remember the search queries, like all of that syntax. Like why not have something, an LLM that knows your search syntax, which I don't know, like it had 5 operators and, like it wasn't that crazy complicated. But what I said was nobody wakes up in the morning and says, time to learn some search queries. What they wake up in the morning for is I want to solve my problem. And if I have to search for something, then I don't want to make this the task of my day, like you shouldn't have to think about this. So these are two things where I was like, I would put LLMs in these, like they are now so good, they can solve this. But then we found out while working on this, we worked on AMP and we basically found that loop that I put in that blog post where you give the agent these models. And now suddenly both of these problems are solved in a way, as if you have enough tokens, right? But like, you can spawn a coding agent. Back then, Claude 3.7, Claude 3.5, right? You could say, upgrade the Go version in this repo. And without knowing anything about it, without specifying anything up front, I think it will manage to do it. No matter where the Go mod file is, no matter what the syntax is, no matter whether there's a vendor subfolder or a subdirectory or whatever. And it will knock it out. Like you can now specify in natural language these outcomes that you want, and you can spawn agents like these repos and they will do it. And then the other thing obviously is, instead of indexing all of the code and building huge indices and keeping them up to date with every commit, if you ask a coding agent, where do we have the class abstract foobar defined, it will nail it. Like it will nail it now. And that doesn't mean that all of the non-agent solutions to this are invalid. Obviously, there's costs and efficiencies and all of that to take into account, but it changes the game. And a lot of the software that I previously worked on, I can see now not being obsolete, but like, wow, like the problem for users that I try to solve in a specific way is solved in a much better way with this other thing now. And that was a big, big, big moment when Quinn and I basically, looked at each other and was like, oh my God, like this is going to change a lot of stuff. Why would you wake up and learn search query syntax if you can write in natural language to AMP or Codex or whatever and say, find me this, and it does it. And you could also see the trajectory of these models. You could see how much smarter they were getting and, faster too. And, if there wasn't a shortage, I guess they would also be cheaper by now. But that was a big, big bang moment for us. Discovering this loop and seeing that, we've been working for me. I've worked on DevTools for 6-7 years at that point, Quinn for 10-11. And you could just see like how many problems, fall away now or can be solved in a different way.
Yeah, okay, that's a lot to digest. This problem space seems to be so intriguing to me. And it's not like I'm in the need for source graph or anything like that. So I knew what it was, but just hearing you talking about it and me placing me in the shoes of people in bigger and enterprise and whatnot. Why these people have totally different problems than what I have. So that's always interesting to hear. But
there's another thing. I'm blanking on the name. Big Haskell guy. He was at Facebook for a long time. He always wears these tie-dye T-shirts. I'm blanking on it. But he's a really smart guy. And back then, so Meta also has a code search engine, right? Google has code search internally. And one of the big promises of Sourcegraph was we bring these code platforms that, these big tech companies have internally. And Quinn and Beyoung, the two co-founders of Sourcegraph, they were at Google at some point. The goal was like, we bring this to the masses, right? You can't even imagine how good the dev tooling is at Meta or Google, but with Sourcegraph, you can also have it, And so the person I can't remember the name of, I'm sorry. Man, I wish I could remember the name. But he was at Meta for a long time, and he was also a professor, and like the guy knows programming. He thought a lot about programming, and he had this presentation. I think it was even mid-24, and basically he had a slide. I think it was an internal presentation, and he worked on the code search platform or something at Facebook, and he said, well, these models and AI are going to change everything, because why search for code if you can generate the solution, And I think that summarizes so much of what we're still seeing, where the problem that people don't wake up thinking, I want to search code, And in large companies, they don't think, oh, my problem is searching code. No, the problem is, how do we render a user avatar on our website? Somewhere in our code base, we must have a component for this. Or how do we do a service-to-service authentication? Somewhere there must be this. So one solution to this problem is you have internal wikis, you have documentation, or code search, right? So you search for authentication, you search for user avatar, and you find other code examples, right? But back then, and I think he was talking mostly about like completion, even like tab completion, right? Where you would start typing code, or you start writing a comment back then with Copilot or something, where you would write, and now we render user avatar, whatever, but assuming it knows about your code base, it would then generate the code for you. And the problem is now solved, and you didn't have to go and search for it. You didn't have to search for the code. And I think that I saw this and I was like, yep, that's exactly 100% right. I fully get it. And then I tried to convince everybody else. It was the same with Copilot. Like, why search for code if it generates the code for you? And I was on a big like roller coaster at this point. And I think, now we're still seeing the effects of this. Like, we're still seeing this, how a lot of dev tooling now gets rethought and kind of mixed up in a lot of ways. To give you an example, like from yesterday, I was setting up, I had to reset my computer and I had to set it up from scratch again. And I was like in the mood, and I was like, oh yeah, maybe I should update my Vim config. I've been using that a lot, but I haven't been using my editor a whole lot in the last 2 years. So, but I was like, yeah, maybe like let's redo my Vim config. I wanted to switch from Vim, the Vim language, Vim language, to Lua for a long time. So I just asked AMP, and I was like, hey, redo my Vim config. And boom, it did it. And then I was like, I need some plugins for this and this and that. And boom, it did it. And when I compared this experience to how many Saturday mornings I spent 10 years ago of like finding out stuff, tweaking it, writing this, and it's astonishing to me. And I still think we're going to see a lot of other stuff change like this, where right now we think, oh yeah, we're going to use AI to do the thing that I've been doing faster, which is what the Vim RC stuff would be. But actually, I don't have to do the thing at all anymore. Like I don't use AI to write me search queries. No, I use AI to find me the thing, or I use AI to generate me the code. And I think we're just at the start of this.
That is very intriguing and sad at the same time. So that
it sad?
It is a little bit, for me at least. But no, not regarding the example that you gave for Vim and things like that. There's a lot of things that I do understand. Things that I find sad at the moment is that some companies forces engineers to use LLMs for some reason and things like that. So that is where I kind of have some difficulties, because I'm a little bit concerned about the future, but it's not like I'm an anti-AI. I'm using that a lot. I won't write any UI code anymore in my life. That's done for me, and I'm very, very happy about that.
Yeah.
But I'm still unsure about, okay, so why AMP? What AMP brings me being a big company or whatever the target. What it brings me more compared to I don't know, the established player out there.
Yeah. I think AMP is the frontier coding agent, where our promise is that we always stay on the latest and the most frontier thing, and we don't play to the mass market. And that's kind of, it's a promise, and it's a product, that means we constantly kill features. Like some people, the meme is AMP will gonna kill it, at some point AMP itself will disappear. But basically what we set out to do was, and we were, one of the first, like we were before OpenCode, we were before Pi, we were before Codex, like it was just us and Claude Code. And back then we were like, no, we're not making any compromises. We're not, and this was when Cursor was selling a $20 a month subscription, and like behind the scenes adjusting the like reducing request size, and we're like, no compromises, only the best model. You want the best, you get it here. There's no restrictions, there's no rate limits, there's nothing. That's how we started. And a lot of people, that resonated with them. They're like, no, I can see it. I want the best of the best, and I don't want any restrictions, so I'm going to use AMP. And then back then we started as a VS Code extension, and then we built a CLI, and we even had tab completion in VS Code, which we killed off at the start of this year. And our whole promise is that we are a moving target, and we will always go where the frontier goes, where the most capable models are. And we said no to a lot of things over the past year. We, just looking back at the last year, like remember when MCP was the biggest thing in the world, and then at some point it became like custom / commands and templates and customizable workflow sub-agents and like all of that stuff. And what we said was, that's just to a large extent it's noise. Like it's model companies, they earn money no matter what, like they earn money whether you blow it into useless loops of sub-agent, like their incentives are not aligned with you getting good results out of it. And what we do is, for individuals, we pass along the cost. We don't make any money off the individuals. You pay what you pay the API tokens. We make money with enterprises. And with enterprises, we are really picky with who we pick. And we said to enterprise, no, we're not gonna build for your Bedrock hosted open source model that somebody set up. Like we're not doing this. Like you could have earned a lot of money back in April 25 with that, but we were like, no. If we do this, we get stuck. Like we get stuck on this, then we have a contract. We need to keep it working for you, but we're a small team. We have to keep moving. We have to be nimble. So we said no to a lot of stuff, and we kill a lot of stuff. We killed the tab completion. We killed the VS Code extension. We killed handoff features. We killed custom / commands. We, a whole bunch of stuff, because we realized, no, these models are getting better, and you need less and less. So we're killing all of that stuff that holds you back from getting the most out of these models. And what we do is we give you the best, most cohesive UX for using a coding agent, so that ideally you can focus on what you want to get done without wasting time on, the fiddly end of things. Oh no, I have this custom / command that triggers this other thing that updates this and does this, and memory here and 5 MCPs over there. We think that's a lot of noise. The most value you get if you focus on the models. And that's AMP lets you unleash the most of these models. And we fine-tune, or not fine-tune, sorry. I guess the word fine-tune works, but it's a loaded term here. We take every model we use, like the frontier models. We have GPT-5.5. We have latest opus right now. If we can get our hands on it, we're going to use Fable and 5.6. And then we combine it with the best possible tools for these model. And we say, no, for GPT 5.5, it wants mostly a tool called shell command. So we tune the system prompt and we tune the tools for a specific model to get the most out of it. And we do this for these others too. Like, this is what a harness is. A harness is not just a model selector and you can select out of one, select your tools out of 50 different tools. Like, you need to go with the grain of the model. You need to figure out how the model behaves and what tools it really wants to use, and then give it to them and kind of take away the other noise. And that's what we do. And now, yesterday we released this. We kind of go up an abstraction layer. Now we call it agents and orbs, which are ephemeral machines where you can run agents. So you can say, spawn me an agent, and it spawns up a machine. It clones your repo, has your plugins and all of that stuff in it. And then you can talk to it via the phone or from the web or from the local CLI and all of that. Because what we believe is that in the future, the whole software development lifecycle will change. It won't. We can talk about this, but I think the whole idea of, it's one engineer on one machine typing away and having 4 checkouts and like 4 agents working parallel on one thing, I think that's a snapshot of this moment in time. But I don't think in a year the state of the art will be you have 4 checkouts and you work on a single machine and then you use one agent on your machine that you remote control from your phone. I think these agents will go into ephemeral machines, just like CI systems have moved from one build server to ephemeral machines, highly parallelizable, and they will have more autonomy. They will run when events come in. They will run proactively. They will run async, and then you pull in the information when you want. And that's what we're building now. That we shipped it yesterday, agents and orbs, and I think that's where this is going. And with AMP, if you use AMP, you kind of, if we don't make you sign a pledge, but I think you sign up for this, or at least a lot of our customers and users appreciate it. They were like, okay, what are you guys up to? What are you working on? Where do you see this is going? How do you use these models? And when you use AMP, that's a lot of what you get. Whereas if you use Claude Code, for example, not to badmouth them, but like, from where I'm sitting, it just seems like they're adding features and features and features, and there's no wrong way to use any of it. And yes, here's a slash command, here's this other thing, here's this. As long as you spend tokens, you're good. And I think I like to see us as the opposite of this, like highly opinionated. We let you get the most out of these models. If you use AMP, you sign up to be on the frontier of what's possible, to get the most out of these models.
That's nice. I think I like it's nice that you have some opinions, because I think it's been a long time since I used Claude Code, but from what I see and what I hear, that is just, and what is it called? Chesney? No, the main guy behind Claude Code.
Yeah, Boris.
Where he's like running loops to run loops to run loops, right? It's like, if you had some like slow down to go faster, maybe like get to a better place faster. Yeah. Do you find, because that's been my experience because I've used them a lot over the past couple of years now, but I've found that I lost a lot of knowledge, and also when I've been telling here on the podcast about projects, there was sometimes where I couldn't really explain what I was doing because it was mainly the agent that done the work, and now I'm doing more of the work myself to regain that knowledge, because that was how I did it before. Have you seen some of this, or do you maybe not think it matters anymore?
Well, both. I think, not to brag, but I've been in that hole earlier than everybody else. that there's like, I don't know how any of this works. Like, I was in that last year in August or something. But I don't know if I can order these thoughts, but let me try. I've been there where I don't know how any of this works anymore, right? I've been there. That's not a good thing. I don't think there's a lot of projects where it's really bad to not know how any of this works. That sounds obvious, but at the same time, there's other projects where I do not care how it works, which might be controversial, but you mentioned, right? UI code.
Exactly.
My blog, like, I don't care about the CSS. I don't care. Like, there's no, we established this. I wrote books about like nice code, and like I'm one of you guys, but I don't care about the CSS. Like, that is, or the HTML. Like, I think that's over. A lot of that stuff just does not matter anymore. If the blast radius and the scope of that thing is acceptable, right? I have so many bash scripts and helpers. I don't care. I don't care about the function names, use camel case, whatever. I don't care. Like, as long as it works and I know, and I'm an experienced programmer, I think I can judge whether there's like a bomb in a 200-line bash script or not. But I think I can judge. And as long as it's not catastrophic, I don't care. Like, I use it, I test it. If it works, it does. How it does argument parsing, I don't care. And but for stuff where the blast radius is large, where I need to build on top of in the future, where it's a central axis in my project, where I then need to, based on how this works, make decisions about how other things should work, or how I will build them, or in what sequence, or with which trade-offs, then I need to know about them. I need to know how the code I write interacts with the runtime. For certain things, like, do we store the whole thing in memory, or do we store it in a database? What's the data look like? Is it a lot of data? Is it a small table? Is it used by every user, every enterprise user? Does it have an index? Will it blow up? What's the workload? Like, all of that stuff, I think I need to know. If it's an internal admin page, I don't give a shit. But if it's a public page, I very much do care. If it's a load-bearing page, yes, I'm going to look at it. But that's how it's kind of like how, if you've ever been a senior engineer, and this sounds horrible, but, like, if you've ever worked with an intern, for example, and the intern is like, oh, I want to build this little thing. And you're like, okay, that intern is going to work on this for 4 weeks, and then we're going to evaluate whether their deployment tool or whatever, we're going to use it. You can give them a pretty long leash, like, as long as you can judge the impact, and you do like spot checks, it's not going to delete the production database. And as long as it's fine, then go ahead. Okay. Maybe with the deployment tool is maybe the wrong example, but you know what I mean? Yeah. And like, go ahead, use Haskell, whatever, like, you can make certain trade-offs. And I think it's the same with AI. Like, but, and here's the trick. Everything I'm saying, I make based on my experience as a software engineer, Like, I all of these decisions I make based on 15 years of working with production systems, and working for multiple years on the same projects with many people and different production workloads. And so, that matters. That still matters. For a lot of stuff, it does not matter anymore, but for certain things, it does matter. And
I do have some interesting thoughts about what you just said, because I tend to agree with what you are saying, but at the same time, I'm wondering how this will translate to software engineering, because now inside either the same team or a lot of teams, there will be some aspect that will move probably extremely fast, because, well, you know what, it's not the core whatever business. It's not that part is not as important as other part. So now we will move at a decent speed in the left and in the right. Well, you know what, we still caring about this thing, because if it explodes, nobody is going to deposit their money tomorrow and things like that. I mean, this is, and it's not like we have, as an industry, it's not like we have solved the problem of how to build, real and solid systems and whatnot. Yeah. So this just adds a lot more challenges that I don't think I've been saying for years. I'm coming from a place where knowing the domain knowledge is paramount, because I always have been on small teams and whatnot. When I the company where I was got hired by Equifax, it was the first time I had the taste of what it is to be quote unquote bigger organization and whatnot. And I was amazed at how many people just don't know the domain, and that's normal.
Yeah.
There's people leaving and things like that. I think we have a lot to think about as an industry, but we were not even there before that. So that's I have a lot of concerns.
I mean, I agree, but then like one of the lessons, we're getting into the nihilistic portion of this, but basically, I think I don't want to say your domain expertise is not valuable, but man, I've had these models where I'm
no. I'm sorry. I wasn't the financial credit. They know shit about that. I'm sorry.
But what I'm saying is, no. I'm saying, as a senior engineer, I would pat myself on the shoulder, say a year ago or two, think like, oh yeah, like this is how you write a migration. You first add the column, and then you write the data to the new thing, and then you remove all the read path from the old column. Like that type of thing where this is what experience teaches you, and it's something that every junior runs into, where they deploy the migration and the updated code, and you need to do a 2-step deployment, whatever. That, I think, would have been something you call, like experience or something. A model will tell you about this right now when you ask it to write certain migrations. Like they will figure this out. They were like, you shouldn't deploy this, So I think a lot of the stuff that we think is hard-won experience, I think that will also be absorbed. I think, to your point of like, oh, some teams move fast and slower. I think what we're seeing now is it's kind of like being a CTO, where you have to direct things at a high level, but you're not close to the metal. You might be in some area, but certainly not all areas, and you still have to make decisions, and you still have to make trade-offs. Yeah. And people have been doing this before. They've been asking teams like, what have you been working on? Why isn't this going faster? What's this? And the team talks between themselves and they go, how can't he see that this is super hard? How can't he see that we're struggling here? But the abstraction is completely different. And now, like with a lot of these things, you have this perspective of being removed from certain things and how they work, and you still have to make decisions. And I'm not saying it's this for everything, but I think a lot of this will come. A lot of this will happen. And
yeah. The problem I'm seeing though is that at some point management will say, oh, you know what, you guys are going very slow. You should start to delegate a little bit more. And now this is where the volume, and I'm talking about the amount of code that need serious reviews, outweigh what we are capable of doing at the moment, and now it's just the burnout that is coming out.
I mean, we're in a transitional period, right? Like this is transitional period. And let's be honest, with 3 guys on the podcast talking about programming, right? Like we're in the top 1% of people passionate about programming. Like 99% of programmers, it's a 9-to-5 job, and they show up and they do the thing that somebody asked them to do, and then they go home. And now if management goes like, hey, you need to use more AI, yeah, of course they're going to hit the magic button that makes the code appear, like, of course, like it's so easy. But what you actually need to do now is you need this experience, and you need like this judgment of, is this good? Do I need to dial it back? Is this high quality? What does high quality look like? And it's really, really hard because let's be honest, like these models can write code a lot better than a lot of junior or mid-level engineers that I've worked with, Like I can say, write me like a 500-line Python script that whatever reliably uploads 5,000 files to a Google bucket, whatever, with retries and resume. It will nail this. It will nail it. And I can tell you a lot of junior or mid-level engineers will take multiple days. And even then, there would be a bug in there. And now you have these forces, force and standing object, or like this is, it's crazy. Like there's a lot of chaos and shock. It's not a smooth thing. And I don't think technical changes like this are like, ever like this. When I remember back to when I started doing Ruby on Rails, people were like, oh yeah, Ruby, you want to use Ruby, garbage collected language to build serious applications? That's great. They would laugh at it and they would say, this is garbage and this is this. And then it was JavaScript. Then the Ruby people would laugh about the JavaScript people and say like, oh, you can't be serious building stuff in JavaScript. This is going to go horribly wrong and blah, blah, blah. And so on it goes and goes and goes. And if you look at the history of technology, it's generation judging the next generation, judging the next generation, judging the next generation. And yet we keep on moving on. And it turns out that there is some progress inherent to it, except if you're super pessimistic or nihilistic. But I think there's this, I guess Hegel would, like it's this pendulum swinging back and forth where we're kind of figuring out, okay, how far can we go? Okay, let's dial it a little bit back. Let's go in this other direction. Let's dial it back. Let's go back in this other direction. But we're moving along. And I think right now, when people talk about AI and how this is a new moment and how this is going to be a problem, I think some historic perspective of, what happened the last 30 years helps put it in, relation to other things where we've been here before, don't just copy and paste code from Stack Overflow. Like that was the thing people said, oh, that guy is a Stack Overflow programmer. It's the end of the world. That guy looks like a scholar now, if somebody goes to Stack Overflow and copy paste code.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm optimistic, I guess, is what I'm saying. I'm optimistic, and I think, it might be crazy, but I don't think, I think it's something's gonna work,
Oh yeah, I'm balanced. I'm not pessimistic. I'm just I know our even without working at a lot of big companies, that's the problem. The money is dangerous and. Yeah. It's a fact that the quality of software is, at least seems to be downgrading a little bit, like everything else. The shitification is real. It's not something that it's.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Like people call AMP, they call it the Porsche of coding agents. They call it the Ferrari of coding agents. Right, and they say we have the best taste, we have the best UX. I'm not making this up, right? They say this about AMP, and yet none of us write code by hand. It's AI.
Yeah. So,
what
is the language of the CLI, for example?
Who knows? Nobody knows.
Oh. It's Haskell for sure.
Whatever. It's our own. No, it's TypeScript out of all things. Okay. Yeah. That the historical background is that we had a VS Code extension, and then you could share code between the all of it, like the CLI, the server, the VS Code extension. So that was a good fit, but.
Yeah. I hope you are using the new V7 that was rebuilt from Go. I installed that yesterday.
Oh, wow. The compiler?
The compiler is really fast.
I don't think I've used it. We're using Bun, so that's pretty fast.
Okay.
Yeah. That's also pretty fast.
But that was a nice testimonial to Go, I found, a testament.
Yeah, that was nice. I think, and I think that what Anders Halsberg, I think he wrote it, right? Like he wrote that GitHub ticket where he was explaining the reasoning of why Go and whatnot. And I thought that was spectacular. I thought I even quoted in my newsletter, I even said, this is software engineering, like this is it. Like this is how you make trade-offs. Here's our objectives. Here's our project. Here's the trade-offs. Here's what this tool will buy us. Here's what this tool will buy us. Under these constraints, I'm making the following decision. And that type of software engineering...
we at least have that.
That won't go away. I don't think...
No.
I think that won't go away. Like I can...
Okay, but how
away.
the juniors will be able to get there?
That's a good question. But... I get it. I fully get it. But let's be honest, that's not a problem. It's a problem that AI surfaced, right? Because our industry was never good with junior engineers. our industry was lucky enough that you had people teaching themselves how to program as teenagers alone at home. And then you could go, hey, you want to do this for some money? And you as a teenager thought, this is the best thing ever. I get paid to program. Like there was a lot of this, and teaching people how to program. Like we had computer science, of course, in universities, but let's not get into it. But some people would argue that it's not really like teaching somebody how to program. Like it was a lot of learning on the job. And what I think the industry needs to shift to, or will necessarily shift to, is we will have to figure out a way to teach people these principles. And it's not undoable, right? Like you can learn nowadays to become a carpenter, even though there's IKEA, like even though you can mass manufacture.
That's not the same quality though.
Yeah, sure. But you learn how to do it to the highest quality, but then do you do it every day? Not necessarily. If you become a fashion designer and you do an apprenticeship, you learn how to make like a dress and whatnot. But then if you work in a fashion house, even if you work in like fashion house in Paris or in Barcelona or wherever, you're not sitting there with your scissors all day long. Like you're designing stuff and you're talking about the textiles and you're talking about the manufacturing process. And then you're sending it off to China or you're sending it off to Sri Lanka or whatever, or somewhere else. And I think that is the type of, I'm not saying exactly this, but I think there's other industries or other domains that we can look at and think, yeah, this is how they teach people how to, they teach people to trade, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they will do this all day long every day after. It's like they will use that knowledge and the expertise in other ways to direct maybe others, or to direct machines, like we just have never done this. In some sense, we did, right? Because when I was a junior, I was often asked to build stuff. And then somebody would tell me, you need to build this. And this is the most important project. And then you finish it and it turns out it's not important at all. They just wanted me to do stuff and bump into a bunch of problems, and they could have done it themselves like 10 times faster. And yet they let me do it for 2 weeks, Yeah. So now we can have AI and have it 20 times faster sometimes. But maybe you do want to have the intern write that Google bucket upload script, so they bump into the issue of resumable uploads or gzip compression or whatever it is, just for learning. The question is, can we as an industry make the shift and see this as worthwhile, as something that people need to invest in? And then the question is, how do you even make the investment? How do you structure this? How do you plan this,
Yeah, and how the junior will react now that they are used to have the answer in millisecond, and now will bump into so many issues that would be a hard moment for them. Because when, if you recall, when I started, there documentation was on CD and whatnot. I remember reading the documentation on MSD, and I started with VB6 back then. Yeah. So I mean, you needed to read so many things and. Yeah, it's a different. But I just let me finish. That's why I was saying about the domain knowledge earlier. I think that might be something that junior developer could develop. And when I say domain expertise, I'm not talking about technology. I'm talking about you are working at a company that do X. You should know what X is, and this is probably where the value will be.
Yes, later. I 100% agree. I think. Man, you guys got me fired up here. But
well, that was like that for me. I was in the financial credit for all my life, so I know commercial credit. So,
but I think a guy I work with, he's a fantastic engineer, and I think he's 10 years younger than me, but he's incredibly wise, and he never cared about the editor or the language or anything. Like he was, I don't care. Like you want me to do this in Go? Yep, I'll do it in Go. You want me to do it in TypeScript? I'll do it. He didn't care. And back then, I'm a guy who was 10 times close to getting Vim tattooed on his body somewhere. Like I'm like, how can you not care about this? This is important. But then at some point, he was like, well, I see engineering as a function of the business. It should serve the business. It's not the end in itself. And I was like, dude, how are you so wise? Because he's 100% correct. At the end of the day, you're employed by a company. And, well, if you're not working where I'm working right now, which is a crazy world where we're building software for other software companies, but if you're working, say, in finance or at a bank or a fashion house or whatever, the goal is not to produce software. The goal is to use software to produce value for the business in some sense, to solve problems. And that is now the important thing. And for a long time, the let's call it the craft, but you could also say the toil of programming or the noise of programming covered a lot of this, right? Because we would go like, oh yeah, I'm going to spend 2 weeks cleaning up our Docker files and, like all of this stuff. And it's easy to lose sight of what are we even doing? Like I spent 3 days writing bash scripts and then setting up a linter for bash scripts and then adjusting the lint rules and going through all of the other bash files. And then you do this for 3 days. Did it help the business? It absolutely did not, and now that stuff gets compressed. It's much faster. So now the question of what is even the value this that you're doing provides to the business, that question is much more important now, much more in the foreground. But the value of software to the business, that might be even more important now. Now that you can maybe do more or fast or whatever, or things that you never would have dared to do before, it's becoming more valuable. But the value of software for software's sake, or the value of programming to feel good about the best code that you've written, that might have, become less valuable.
Yeah. Also, I think curiosity is probably becoming a much higher competitive advantage to have now, because I definitely work with a lot of people where it was, as we just talked about, like knowing the business was secondary to writing some beautiful code. They didn't really care. It was, whereas I come from a business background, like I studied finance and then I taught myself code, and so I've always been interested in both aspects of it, and I can definitely feel it whenever I've been out in startups, in big businesses. That was always John's one, whatever, like, does it really matter, this specific little thing, right? Like, we just need to get this out and actually see if this is correct. So I also think that there's, again, talking about how juniors are going to learn, I think the fundamentals, I don't think has changed in software with these tools. I think they're the same. We can just, it's just a new tool you need to adapt to. And if you can employ your curiosity with these tools, I don't see why you wouldn't still learn code, because if you are curious, you iterate, you're going to see all these flaws in what the model did, and I still think you're going to learn from it. There's this guy on Twitter, Matthew Peacock, who created like a skill where you basically have this thing that has seen more code than anyone on earth, and you can iterate through it, right? So I just think it's a new paradigm. Like, I learn a lot of code from Reddit. I got a lot of my opinions from Reddit, and I don't have them anymore, most of them, because it's like, is this really true?
I agree. So, I agree. I mean, I do think though that, at least speaking for myself, like let's start with an analogy real quick. But like, there's people who work in sales, who are in sales not because they like selling stuff, but because they like talking to people. They like talking to other people. They like having connections to other people. They like helping other people. And you can add, like, whether they sell a car or like a terrace roof or whatever, it does not matter to them as much as how that job makes me feel, and I guess it's the same for a lot of other jobs. Like, you like spending time in this job. You maybe do not care that much about the end result, or the value. And with programming, a lot of us, especially people listening to this podcast, right? Like, that's why you listen to a podcast like this. We care about, like, I really enjoy typing code, like, I like to quote Gary Bernhardt, like, I like the cadence of typing. I like liked spending Saturdays and Sunday mornings tweaking my Vim config, or like getting that function just right, or, seeing this function name is 10 times better. Oh, I found the perfect struct. Like there was an aesthetic joy to it. There was a sense of mastery of, now I can do this better than last week. And that was completely independent of any business outcome. It was purely this, I like doing this in my day-to-day. I like seeing this number go up. I like writing this faster thing. I like this neatly organized code. I like my color scheme. I like looking at this terminal color scheme, And a lot of that obviously is not as valuable anymore, not even part of the job anymore. So yes, like some people, they like programming because, like you, they come from a different background and now use programming to serve that background and to serve that goal and provide value. But others, like they like choosing the right keyboard per language they work in. The business outcome is secondary. They like the day-to-day thing of being a programmer, and for those programmers, like, changes we're going through are tough.
Right. Yeah. I'm missing programming. Oh, go ahead.
So no, I was just going to say, like, always the right color scheme is Groovebox.
Dude, I didn't want to say it. Now you said it. Yes, you're 100% right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. I'm missing it a little bit sometimes because I'm writing less and less code, of course. So I still don't let it write too much on the back end, if at all.
Yeah.
But that's just me. But again, I mean, when you find your comfortable spot, it's on, it do work, and it does go faster and things like that. So
yeah, it's definitely project dependent as we talk. Like I have this little side project where I'm kind of building my own Rails in Go, where it's purely LLMs that have done that thing, and it's just me using it, the end product, where I don't care how it does, because it's just template manipulations. I don't really care. I just want to go fast with these tools, right? And then I have infrastructure product where I was like, hold on, I actually really care about how this server gets set up and how this backup gets done and made, And there I was like, okay, now I need to switch off my strategies, right? So yeah.
Wild times.
Interesting times, yeah. Thorsten, thank you so much for joining. I think we will wrap up. Is there any closing thoughts that you want to say?
No, I don't have anything.
Yeah,
I think I got it all out at least. I could go longer, but you got to stop somewhere.
I think it's definitely interesting. We are in a strange time, but an interesting one at least.
Yeah, like closing word for me is, I don't know, whoever follows me, I've been banging this drum for, now I think 2 years. Like, keep your eyes open, like I think, be open-minded. There's multiple ways to find beauty in things that you're doing, and maybe unexpected ways, things that you didn't anticipate that look different than what you did before. And, program is definitely changing, but maybe if you keep your eyes open, you can find joy in doing it in a different way than you thought was possible.
Yeah, sure. And I have one question that just popped. I'm curious to hear just a couple of seconds. Do you believe that we will have programming language that are made for LLMs?
Good question. I don't think so. Short version is, I think, like, the training data.
Yeah.
Obviously, like, if you believe the hype, then, well, if you have like the most powerful model in the world, you could generate as much training data as you want for whatever language you come up with. Maybe we'll have that at some point, but right now, at least for, say, the next few years, I would say the amount of training data, not just code, but also documentation and Stack Overflow and like all of that stuff that's floating out there, it's just a big mode for existing languages. And if you look at Go, for example, this was the last couple of years, like some people were saying models are so good at writing Go because Go's standardized tool chain, go test, go run, go build, worked so well in a lot of open source repositories that the people who train and RL these models could get a lot of Go code running, and say like, run these tests, like all of that stuff. And it wasn't, unrunnable, like I would say old C projects or JavaScript dependencies that were outdated. And I don't know, there's a lot to consider, but I think in some sense, I'm a big believer in the whole worse is better philosophy, in that, yes, there might be a more optimal, more precise, more efficient language that LLMs can use. But man, they can write Go like crazy, or JavaScript, and question is, can you actually be better than that?
Yeah, that has to be discovered, I guess.
Okay, then I also have a final quick one. I'm really curious to hear if you think open source or closed source models will win out in the end, because that's a thing we've been discussing a few times on the podcast around the financial of these frontier models. So it's just interesting to hear your take on that.
Oh man, wow, you got another hour. So okay, I have a lot of thoughts on this. I thought a lot about this, but basically, it boils down to, if your model house, like meaning OpenAI, Anthropic, and whatnot, like the closed source ones, I think you're in a really, really bad spot. Like basically, the setup is this. Everybody believes AGI is possible. Everybody believes that the bigger model is possible. That means if you release a big model, then your competitor goes, I'm going to build an even bigger model. You cannot rest ever. You're like a shark. If you stop, you will die, because your competitor will release a better model. Because turns out, models can be switched out. And as long as a model is better, people will switch to this model. There's no loyalty to Claude 3.5 from last year. It's dead. So you have to keep moving. You have to get better. That means that even though, Dario Amodei said it in an interview, you could, if every model that a company releases was its own company, they would be profitable, right? Based on inference. You put some training data in, then you run inference. The inference has a higher margin. You can make money off of it. The problem is every bit of money you make, you need to reinvest into the next model, because this is a race, right? You need to get to the next model because your competitor is building the next bigger model. So now you're in this race. You cannot stop or you will die. And suddenly, in the rearview mirror, Chinese open source models show up and give it away for free. And they're right behind you. They're not as good as you are. But if you hit the brakes and you slow down, they will catch up, and then they will give it away for free and destroy all of your value. It's wild. Like, it's crazy. It's sometimes, like last year, I thought, okay, I'm working on the coding agents and the models. They have all the cards in their hands and whatnot, blah, blah. But then you imagine working at, OpenAI, you release your best model. And then 2 weeks later, Anthropic says, here's the best new model. And then people switch over again. And then 3 weeks later, it happens again. And then the Chinese model says this and then this. And I think it hasn't played out yet. I think it's a race to the bottom. I think models will become a commodity. If, one model reaches that, escape velocity, AGI, which I'm not really, I don't know, I'm not religious, I guess. But if they reach this point, maybe all bets are off, and then they're faster and better than everybody else, and nobody else can catch them. That's, I think, the premise of a lot of this. If that happens, who knows? But I think this is a race to the bottom. I think it's like Benedict Evans says, like it's like the telecom companies in the early 2000s, like, it will become a commodity. You might have a contract with them. You get 200 text messages for free, or 500, whatever. But at some point, you got this contract, whatever. Like, it's a race to the bottom. And now with like that whole game being changed with like the US government and whatnot, and that changes things a lot. And then Dario going after the regulation is like, you need to regulate this is dangerous. And now they're getting it, and it's freaking crazy. And now the Chinese,
it's not that dangerous.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, I think there's a good chance that everything I just said the whole thing might be reshuffled in the next few weeks, right? Depending on how this, Fable is supposed to come back today. I haven't checked Twitter in 2 hours, so who knows? But like, all of this might change with like the Chinese models and open source models and whatnot. And that being said, I do think right now, like, again, like AMP is for the frontier. I think the open source models are not the frontier yet. They might be. But they might be the affordable frontier or the free frontier, right? Because you're not allowed to use these other models anymore, which pisses me off like crazy, which is why, AMP and Quinn, we're now advocating for what we call freedom of intelligence. It shouldn't be the US government deciding who gets to use this. Like, if a private company decides to release their product to a closed audience, that's, whatever. But that whole thing of like only US citizens and whatnot, we're against. And like, all of that is going on. All of that is crazy. I don't know who will win, but what I am relatively certain is that it's a race to the bottom, and I don't think like a model company like an Anthropic, without regulation or whatever, is going to be the clear winner if they don't reach like that escape velocity AGI thing.
Yeah, but also like the IPO numbers from OpenAI were pretty bleak, and it looks like they've been doing some fiddling with the numbers and paying like some of the infrastructure they put on the sales and marketing. So it looks like you say it's a race to the bottom. It seems like
but the other thing that people often forget with this is. How in the early 2000s, like AWS, people were making fun of AWS or Amazon. You're not making any money. You're not making any money. Blah blah. You're not profitable. Amazon is not profitable. But what they did, of course, is they reinvested everything, right? So they didn't want to make any profit because they want to reinvest and grow bigger and bigger and bigger. But if they would have stopped just for 2 years, they could have had crazy profit numbers. But they didn't because they want to, that whole thing. And now with models, there's this whole thing of if they could have like 5 times the GPUs and data centers and energy, they would sell it. They're compute constrained. Most engineers that I talk to do not understand is how compute constrained these companies are. That Mythos, Anthropic is a rumor that like a month ago, they were close to closing signups because they couldn't serve any new users. Wow. And they're making a crazy amount of money. So imagine the pressure you have to be under to even consider this when you go from, 50 million last year to 40 billion projected ARR this year. And then you think, we got to stop signups because we don't have enough GPUs. And now it's not just GPUs, it's the whole value chain. It's the copper coming out of the ground and the data centers and the energy. Like, they're constrained with everything. But if we had enough of this, and supposedly, the CapEx being spent this year and last year is supposed to come online in the form of energy in, say, the next 3 or 4 years, a lot of capacity will come up. And then maybe the prices will, go in the other direction. And then you have more GPUs and all of this. And it's, just another thing that makes this even crazier, just to mention this, is people were saying, oh yeah, you're spending all of this money on GPUs, but they're going to depreciate in like 3 years and then they're worthless. No, like the H100s that are used today are even worth more than they were 3 years ago. That's crazy. Our memory prices are up. Our disk prices are up. That's never happened in all my life in computers. Like, hardware is supposed to get cheaper. Technology is supposed to get cheaper. But now we're so resource constrained that the prices are not going down. They're going up. Apple raised their prices for phones. That's wild. Yeah. So if we're talking about IPO numbers and like financials of these models, like, you have to take all of this into account. It's not, we cannot talk about their business being profitable or not without taking into account that they're completely resource constrained and they're in this crazy race where they can't even say, guys, let's pause. We're going to use our model. We're going to make it profitable. Because if they do this, their competitor will release the next model and then they're worthless. So it's absolutely wild. And again, I could talk for 2 hours, but I actually got to hop.
Yeah. Wow, that's pretty interesting. All right. So let's wrap up. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you guys. Thank you for having me. This was fun.